Hello everyone, this is Pal Ponder on Weather. In this update, we're going to be talking about where and when our next big storm could be. Welcome back everyone, how's it going? This is your morning update. I appreciate all my followers and my new followers out there. If you are new to the channel and you like detailed weather breakdowns on North America and the tropics, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and notification bell to get all my daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. So let's take a look at the satellite picture this morning, and we're still dealing with those rains that are going to be coming into portions of northern and central California. We got one more day of heavier rains, and then all eyes turned to the midsection of the country where they dealt with all those bigger hailstones yesterday in portions of Iowa, stronger storms overnight into Illinois as well as Indiana. And then we're watching several short waves are going to be coming across the Great Lakes and the Northeast over the next couple of days. They're going to be bringing some severe weather for them. And then all eyes are out here in portions of Puerto Rico where they're dealing with Hurricane Fiona right now. And they have still, it made landfall in portions of the Dominican Republic. But yeah, Puerto Rico definitely got hit hard with this system with devastating flash flooding out there. Then we got Lester that made its inbound course into portions of Mexico here. Then we have newly developed Tropical Storm Madeline, but unfortunately that one's actually heading out into the open waters. But then all eyes are turning to this little wave out here into the Atlantic. That's actually could be our next big storm. So we're going to be setting all this up for you in this update. So let's take a look at the overall setup for Fiona right now. And it is a 90-mile-per-hour hurricane. It's only moving at 8 miles an hour, so that's why this makes this a devastating flash flooding setup. And they do have hurricane watches and warnings for portions of the Dominican Republic. It actually made landfall about 3 o'clock in the morning. That's going to be taking a beeline and skirt the Turks and Caicos area and become the first major hurricane of the season. In fact, it's going to get dangerously close to Bermuda as a major hurricane. They've only had since 1851, since the Hurricane Center's been tracking these storms, 1851, guys, they've had 10 direct landfalls in Bermuda. And you can definitely see by Friday morning, yeah, we could be looking at right on the cusp of another fairly close system. It's definitely going to be bringing a lot of impacts to Bermuda as well as the Turks and Caicos on the way. But still today, they're still dealing with those heavier rains in portions of Puerto Rico. Last night, in fact, the grid failed and they're all 100%. We're talking 1.5 million people in Puerto Rico were without power. And as I was doing this video this morning, they have actually restored about 100,000 people with power. So they're slowly trying to get back. But I mean, they're still feeling the effects from Fiona, what those outer bands are going to be coming across. And you can see from the latest radar depiction, we're talking, we could be looking at an additional 4 to 6 inches. Places in the southeast of Puerto Rico have already picked up, yes, upwards to 20, if not 2 feet of rain. So we're talking another potentially 4 to 6 feet with even isolated 10 inches in spots. Yes, extremely heavy rain still going to be impacting what these areas with these water content values of 3, 4, 5, 6 inches per hour at times. Extremely heavy rain, devastating mudslides, landslides in that area. So yes, it's definitely a really intense storm they're going to be dealing with as this will continue to shift off and going to be impacting portions of the Turks and Caicos and then eventually Bermuda. So we can take a look at the overall water vapor imagery this morning. You can see where Fiona is, and then all the yellow here is that's your drier air. And this is actually our next tropical wave that we're going to be looking at that could actually become Gaston in the days ahead. You can actually see once it gets past this drier air, it's got a lot of room to work with. This air mass is pretty moist. There's not much dry air to speak of. So that once it gets passed into this portions of the Western Caribbean, a lot of signs has this developing into our next tropical system. So as we take a look at the overall setup on the latest GFS model, again, as Fiona will move out, it'll take all of its precipitation with it and skirt basically Bermuda by the time we get into late Thursday into the early morning hours on Friday. But underneath that's going to be setting the stage for our next potential storm system that could be Gaston. So yeah, by the time we get into your Friday timeframe, the 23rd, yeah, we could be looking at another formidable storm starting to become to fruition right along the boundaries of the Leeward Islands. This is going to be tracking southward from what Fiona did. So I don't think it's going to be impacting Puerto Rico. I don't think it's going to be impacting the Dominican Republic. But I do feel it's going to be entering portions of the Western Caribbean as we get into this weekend time frame. And if you take a look at the overall icon model, kind of has the same guidance. I mean, we're starting to see a lot of model congruency coming together. It only goes out 180 hours. By the time we get into your Monday, the 26th, it essentially has it west of the Leeward Islands, south of Dominican Republic, south of Puerto Rico, heading towards the island of Jamaica. So let's take a look at the setup for the U.S. because today we've got that trough that's going to be coming in off the coast of California that brought all the heavier rains and still bring in some much needed rains for portions of central and northern California, while the rest of the country just really heats up in a big way. We've got a really impacting ridge of high pressure that's got a lot of sinking air for a good chunk of the country and a lot of heat that's going to be building over the U.S. While we have a little shortwave that's going to be coming across and bringing some heavier storms today in portions of the Northeast. We're talking places like Pittsburgh into Pennsylvania, State College, Scranton areas. Those areas will be going to be impacted with some gusty winds and some stronger thunderstorms later on this afternoon. While we're taking a look at this little trough out here, that's going to be a short wave that's going to be coming across. That's going to be adding to some severe weather into portions of the upper Great Lakes. Yeah, portions like Cleveland, back into Buffalo could be looking at some stronger thunderstorms as we get into your Tuesday and your Wednesday time frame. But as we go into your Friday time frame, we've got a pretty good significant trough that's going to be diving into the eastward parts of the country. That's going to bring some cooler air. Actually, it's probably technically the coldest air of the season. That's going to be dropping down and impacting those areas, but it's also going to be helping to pick up what will be still Fiona by then and actually lift it off. And it could skirt pretty close to Nova Scotia back into Newfoundland, but that will actually pull it off to sea, while underneath we've got that ridge of high pressure, and man, Oklahoma and Texas just really cranks up the heat in a big way. Yeah, we're talking record high temperatures, potentially back into the upper 90s, if not some locations hitting the century mark again, unfortunately, for parts of Oklahoma and Texas as we get into your day on Friday, heading into your Saturday time frame. But as we go into next week, things do start to get interesting because yes, we'll have another ridge that's going to be developing, and then you won't be cold anymore, but you're going to be hot again, basically, and out west. But this ridge really amplifies and really starts to dig into the portions of Canada, and that's a pretty intense ridge of high pressure. This won't be until the 28th or till the 29th time frame, so we're talking about the middle of next week. But what that's going to do is that is definitely going to help lower the pressures underneath into the Caribbean, and that is going to help intensify the newly developed storm of could be Gaston by then, and that's going to be our big next storm maker. So but if you take a look at the overall vertical velocity index, we've got a lot of ingredients are starting to come together. So once that wave moves past that drier air mass, it's got a lot of vertical lift, right? So there's what Fiona is. That's going to be lifted out to sea. But underneath that, it still has a lot of vertical lift out into the Western Caribbean. So once that short wave comes across, not going to have much dry air to choke it off. It's definitely going to be able to have those thunderstorms upward rising motion air to allow those thunderstorms to get more numerous, and then eventually they'll start congealing together as the pressures start to lower into the Western Caribbean. So let's take a look at the setup as we go into your 27 time frames, because that's when things definitely start to get interesting. I think by then we'll have all the pressure gradients lower, we'll have all the dry air out of the way, and we'll have a formidable storm that's able to try to get its act together. So it should be in and around the island of Jamaica. So this is definitely going to be further south than what Fiona was. So it's definitely going to be missing Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. But I do feel places like into Jamaica, places like into the Cayman Islands are going to be more set up with this heavier rain. So we could be looking at a formidable storm somewhere around the 27th time frame into the Western Caribbean with a lot of heavier rains. The latest EPS probability guidance basically implies the same thing. On the 27th of the month, a developing tropical system will really start to get its act together, pounding with very heavy rain into the island of Jamaica, back into the Cayman Islands, getting into the Western Caribbean as it continues westbound, as the ridge will be over a good chunk of the US into Canada, helping to lower those pressures into the Western Caribbean. So if we take a look at the overall EPS guidance going forward, most of them has, of course, this is Fiona going out to sea, but underneath that, newly developed Gaston could sneak underneath and be setting up in and around near Jamaica into the Cayman Islands, and a lot of the ensembles have it getting closer to the Yucatan and actually could pull it further east towards Cuba and potentially eventually heading towards potentially Florida, right? So as we take a look at the overall setup on the 27th on the GFS guidance, kind of the same deal. This is your ensemble members right around the 27th. So we got the icon, we got the operational, we got a lot of the ensembles starting to hint at basically right there into Jamaica, into the Cayman Islands. We could be seeing a lot of lower pressures by the time we get into that 27th time frame for our next big storm to really start to come to fruition. And if we take a look at the overall tropical cyclone heat potential, yeah, there's plenty of heat, guys, not just at the surface. We're talking deep ocean water content. Yeah, there's plenty of room to fire here. So you got vertical lift, you've got sea surface temperatures higher, you've got deep ocean temperatures higher, and you ain't got much dry air, right? So there's not much to stop this thing developing once it gets past into the Western Caribbean, south of Jamaica, essentially right around the Cayman Islands time, around the 27 time frame for sure. So as we take a look at the overall latest operational on the GFS guidance, yeah, it's got a formidable storm. It's actually got a pretty significant hurricane blowing up right around this same area into Jamaica and to portions of the Cayman Islands right around that 27, 28 time frame. So again, a lot of guidance has definitely come together and hinting this is going to be our next big storm maker, and it could be taking the name of Gaston. So where would it go, right? So here's what you're climatologically, the last 100 years, right? So if a storm formed in the Western Caribbean, where does it typically go towards the end of September, the first part of October? Well, it's basically setting up right here, right along Jamaica, right into the Cayman Islands. It has it towards the Yucatan, and most storms, if they form in this area, actually takes where they take this green shaded path. So this actually fits the typical mold of a storm that would form in this area for this time of year. So if we take a look at the overall ensemble member guidance as our precipitation of water value guidance, again, this is Fiona moving out into the open waters. It'll be by. Underneath it, we'll have our newly developed storm. So it's showing a lot of rain going to be impacting portions of Jamaica, impacting the Cayman Islands, maybe potentially clipping portions of the Yucatan, going to Cuba, but a lot of the ensembles are definitely hinting eventually it could impact portions of Florida as we get towards, you know, the 10-12 day time frame. So in the latest European guidance kind of has the same thing on the ensemble members, has it coming across into the Western Caribbean. If it clips the Yucatan, it's going to be close, but it could be, again, portions of basically following the same guidance of where the climatologically time frame of most storms would fall. And here's your latest wind field on the latest run of the GFS. Kind of implies the same thing. Has that storm blowing up into the Western Caribbean. Of course, this is only one run, but a lot of ensembles have this favored type setup on where our next big storm will be. So you got plenty of time to watch this, right? So I wanted to get out to you early so you can definitely plan ahead for this next storm. Not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen the next day. So we're talking probably sometime in the middle of next week. We could be talking about our next big formidable storm out here into the Western Caribbean, and it will be taking the name of Gaston. So I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely leave your comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update while I protect you before and after the storm.